We're on Daf Nun Beis Amud Aleph. We learned the first year of Perek Lamed Tes. And we're in the middle of a discussion about Chai and Medaber, right? Chai means a Yid whose Avodas Hashem is without so much Seichel. He's using his Seichel plenty, but he's being ma'oded his Teva in the three Ifanim that I told you yesterday, day before yesterday. And Sichli means you're using your mind to create original Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, which is not coming from the Teva, but coming from the Adam of the Adam. And he connects it to Malachim and Neshamas. And he also connects it to Yetzirah and Bria. That Malachim of Neshamas of Tzadikim, who serve the Eibishter with Mayach, that's Ma'ated original Midas, as opposed to Tiviyas Dikim Midas, they live in Elam HaBria, and Malachim live in Elam HaYetzirah. Says the Rebbe, I want you to know like this. This that I said, that Neshamas are higher than Malachim, and that Neshamas are in Bria, and Malachim only in Yetzirah, because there's no real Meichin, is only the Madrega of Neshama of particular people. Shem Bechin is Meichin, the godless, and the Madrega of Meichin, the godless, Ein Sabarach. So there's two conditions. First of all, it's only Neshama as opposed to Ruach and Nefesh, and it's only Tzadikim. Even the Ruach of these Tzadikim, in other words, these Tzadikim who are holding by Madrega of Dechil Rechim Sichlim, where their midas are not coming from the Teba, from the Seichel. Only the Neshama level of their Neshama is going up till Bria, but the Ruach level is not. V'chein sh'ar kol Neshames Yisrael. Other Yidden, even the Madrega of their Neshama, that since Shavdos Hashem b'Dechil Rechim HaMasuteres, they're serving Hashem only with Yireh and Ava, which is hidden, believe, close Yisrael, in the collective body of the Jewish nation, which is called Ava Masuteres. And Ava Masuteres only goes up to Elam HaYetzirah, not to Elam HaBria. Now I mentioned to you in the end of Perek Lamed Ches, right, the second part that I added, that the Inyan of Dechil Rechim Tivim, the Madrega of Chai, has three forms. One is where you Megala Midas based on your Teva, not based on your Seichel. The second is where you're trying to Megala the Midas, but it doesn't come out, it's hidden. And the third is you Megala the Pintal Yid. Here he's talking about the Pintal Yid. He says, Dechil Rechim HaMasteres B'Leiv Klolos Yisrael. Whenever you see Klolos Yisrael, you know you're talking about Pintal Yid stuff. This is also, it's only Madrega of Yetzirah. I'll try to discuss this in Sof Perek Tezayin also. He says, so then the Ruach, even of these Tzadikim, and Bechlal, other Yidden, even if they serve Hashem with Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, they're only going to Yetzirah, they're not going to Bria. But there's an exception. Rak b'Shabbos v'Reish Chodesh levad, but on Shabbos and Reish Chodesh they do go up to Bria, derech ha'amud, through the pillar, the beam, Shemei Gan Eden atach Gan Eden, which is in between the lower Gan Eden and the higher Gan Eden. The lower Gan Eden would be Yetzirah, and the higher Gan Eden, Shu Elam HaBria, Nika Gan Eden Elyon, the higher Gan Eden is Bria, which is called the higher Gan Eden, because it's Lisaneg Al Hashem, it's a place where you have pleasure, Al Havayeh, V'lehanetz Meziva Shechina, to have pleasure from the Ziva de Shechina in the Madrega of Moichen. And on Shabbos and Reish Chodesh, all Yidden have the schus to go up to this Madrega, even though during their physical lifetime they only served Hashem with natural midas and they belong in Yetzirah. On Shabbos and Reish Chodesh to get a matana. There is no pleasure in Gan Eden to a creation. Seichel Nivra means a creation taka, but his whole etzem is Seichel, like Malachim are called Sichlim Nivdolim. So Neshama doesn't call the Seichel Nivra. Ela b'mashamaskil umevin v'yedeya umasik. Only based on what he creates and understands and knows and intellectually reaches, b'sichli ubinasa, using his wisdom and his understanding, this that is able to understand and intellectually reach about Elokus and infinity, through the help of the wisdom and understanding of the Eibishter, which radiates into Elam HaBria. So the real pleasure, says the Rebbe, is pleasure from Hasogit. Even though there's pleasure from Midas, but the Ikke Neshamas, the Ikke pleasure for a Neshama, and a Neshama, it's called Teichel Nivra, is from the pleasure of understanding the Eibishter, and this is the world of Bria. So even though their Avodah was in a level of the Chilul Rechimu Tivim, they serve Hashem with their nature, and they belong in Yetzirah, Shabbos, Reish Chodesh, they get a matana, they go up to Elam HaBria. Why? Right? Or as they say in American, it's not fair. Why are they zeicher to go higher than the Malachim, even though they're in the same level of the Malachim? They only served Hashem using their natural Yira and their natural Ahava, so they belong in Yetzirah, not in Bria. And the answer is because of Birurim. Vaitereim from Birurim. Hainu mipnei. Since Shaydei, through their Dechil Urechimu, or to say it backwards, in order to reach their Yira and Ahava, there was a need for a Skafe Sitracha that the bent Klippa, Hamalabesh Begufam, because they were involved in a body that's an obstacle to connection to the Eibishter. Bein Bebechinas Somera, they had to stay away from evil. Of course, like the Gemara says, Malachim Besa Klum Yetzahari Yesh Beinechem. They don't have Somera. Lich Besha Taivis to suppress Taivis, desires, or L'shavar to break them. Ubein Bebechinas Vaseitev Kanal, also in doing good, as we discussed earlier. Earlier, I suppose, means Pedikla Medzayin, but I'm not sure. So because they had to fight, even though their real place is Yetzirah, they're serving Hashem with Midas Tiviyim, they get a matana. They go up to Bria, because Bria is Elam HaSaga, and the real Tainug is the Tainug that comes from understanding Getlachkeit and not from anything else. Number two, in addition, another difference between people and Malachim is that they have free will. And Livchei Berachas Hashem, they could have chosen evil, which Malachim don't have an option for, at least not Malachim of Yetzirah. And nevertheless, Ubacharu B'Tev Yankele, they chose good, page 104, 4 lines from the top. And therefore, it affected the glory of the Eibishter is manifest in a much greater way, as it discusses in Tanya chapter 27, like the advantage of light over darkness. And therefore, they have an interesting exception to the rule of the Mizakt. Normally, you go where you belong. And if you serve the Hashem with your teva, you didn't break your teva. No matter what your teva means, you're only in Yetzirah. And in Yetzirah there's no real hasaga, and there's no real tainuk from hasaga. It's your teva. Nevertheless, when it comes to Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, because Yidden did iskafia, and they had free will, and they were beicher b'tev, and they affected Yisanim techacheshech, they get a matana to go to El Mabriya. Sure, that's it. This is the end. We're in the middle of a chitas now, middle of a shir, middle of the shir, right? Middle of Tes Nissan's shir. I'm sorry, middle of the shir of Tes Nissan, of Ches Nissan, I'm sorry. Right in the middle of the shir, yes. But it's the end of an Inyan. Atkan. So far, we're saying that neshamas have aliyas, right? And again, I know this is redundant and make you crazy. There's daimim tzemeach chai medaber. Daimim is asiyah. Chai is tzemeach is dibur. Tzemeach is kavana based on teva, and medaber is kavana based on seichel. And it's because the chiluk division tzadikim gedolim and malachim, and to be very humble, to be very honest, and the rest of us. The difference is malachim is we have a greater mulchama, so we get a matana on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. Now the Alter Rebbe goes into a whole new sugya. And this whole new sugya requires a hagdama. What we're saying so far is, we all come down into this world, yeah? And of course, we have to remember that there's also a difference, not just where we go, but where we came from also. The Chassidus has a whole shturim on the Pasuk, on the Mishnah, Ma'ayim Bosel Ona Tehelech. You come from a place called Ayin, you return to a place called On. And there's different opinions which is Ayin and which is On. So the ability for neshamas to reach Bria Yetzirah has a lot to do with whether they came from Bria Yetzirah or Asiyah. You know what I'm saying? But the point that he talked about until now was, you go back to the olam that you earned through your avoida and through your birurim, through your kavanah. Kavanah Tivis is Yetzirah, Kavanah Sichlis is Bria. He didn't tell us yet the Gevaldike Maila of Asiyah. He doesn't talk about the Maila of Asiyah. He's only speaking now about Mitzvah B'lei Kavanah of B'lei Neshama. The Maila of Asiyah is not which Gan Eden you go to. The Maila of Asiyah isn't the Dira B'Tachtein, the Elokus that you bring now. Now starts a whole new world. And this whole new world is a continuation of what we said before, but with a very, very important additional nuance. And that is that every world has a pnimius and a chitzonius. And let's start with a mashal. I'm giving you now a shikl shir. Chachafil, this is only chita, a few minutes. Every human being has a brain and a heart. This is the center of the person. Al piteva, Ashet and Sifei Teira, also as in Sifei Machshava, also. The brain and the heart are the first thing to form from the Tipas Ha'av. They come from the deepest part of the Tipas Ha'av, and they develop first. And the rest of the body forms around it. The neshama rests in the brain and the heart. There's machlekes in the Rishonim, where the neshama is, whether the heart or the brain, and Chassidus holds like both. And basically, the etzem of the neshama is in the heart, the complexity, the sophistication of the neshama is in the moyach. The naran you would put in the moyach, yechid is stuck in the lev. And it's not a discussion for right now. But they're the center of the person. The rest of the person serves two functions. It allows the brain and the heart to be in this world. It gives out from the brain and the heart into the world, and it takes in from the world into the body, and ultimately it's serving the brain and the heart. The whole human being is a servant of the brain and the heart. The brain and the heart is the center. That's what the neshama is. From the neshama, the chayis comes to the whole guf, and you want the guf to remain attached to the brain of the heart. If God forbid the brain of the heart become disconnected from the guf, this is called a stroke. It's a sickness, and it's terrible. Because the whole kavanah is that the neshama, which is in the pneumius of the person, should affect the whole brain and the whole heart. You understand? Adam is a elam cotton, like it says in whatever it is, Avos Rabnas. Right? He's a model of a small world. The brain and the heart of the person is the Beis HaMikdash of a world. Because in the Beis HaMikdash, the Shechina rests. In the Kodesh HaDoshim you have Chabad or Kachab. In the Heichel you have Chagas. In the Azara you have Nihi. And the Mizbeach is Malchus. This is the center. The Shechina is there. When you went into the Beis HaMikdash, you experienced Get Lachai. This was God's home. This was Gili Alakus. Just like the brain and the heart is the place of the Gili Hansham. And it's imperative that the rest of the world, which are the arms and the legs and the whole reality of the Getlachkeit, which is found in a tiny little area, the Beis HaMikdash, should be manifest. And Kiyudu HaMeforsim, the windows of the Beis HaMikdash were made inside out. Chalinus Ashkufim Atumim. So that the light was shining out of the Beis HaMikdash as opposed to into the Beis HaMikdash. Because it's all about the center. So you should know like this. Elam Atzilus has two things. Elam Atzilus and Atzilus. Elam Abriya has two things. Elam Abriya and Briya. Elam Yetzira and Yetzira. Elam Asiyah and Asiyah. And of course, Elam Asiyah and Asiyah Gashmis. The problem is with Churban Beis HaMikdash. There's a very important missing link. We don't have the physical brain and the heart of the Eibshter. It's missing. We still daven towards Yerushalayim based on the belief that the Beis HaMikdash Shalmaila is Mechuvan and Mishal Mata. But we need our tefillas to reach the Beis HaMikdash Ne'el Ma'yetzira Ruchni. And it's a longer trip. That's why in Golos they say no lereinu and you don't see Gil Alakus because you're missing your brain and your heart. The Shechina is not in the Gashmizdika world. You're getting Ashpah from a Ruchnizdika Shechina in a Ruchnizdika Beis HaMikdash. It's 2 steps away from Zakt. So the Ashpah doesn't always come down correctly, and it certainly doesn't always come down in a revealed way. But this Mancha Beis HaMikdash Hayakayam, you saw how the Beis HaMikdash is the nerve center. It's the shadish of Chayes Ne'elam Hazeh Gashmi. It was the shadish of all bracha, and Goyim went there too. Basically, and there was Gili Alakus. In other words, it wasn't just you went to the Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMikdash windows were mashpia Chayes and Shefa to the whole world. This is why the Churban Bayis is so terrible. We're missing that link with Getlachkeit. But every world has a center. When you say Esses Sfiras of Atzilus, Esses Sfiras of Atzilus are not Atzilus. Esses Sfiras of Atzilus are the Beis HaMikdash of Atzilus. They're the brain and the heart of Atzilus. Atzilus is called Medurin, Hecholos, Levushim. Has a lot of names, but not the brain. When you say Bria, Bria is a world. The brain and the heart of Bria, the Beis HaMikdash of Bria, this is Esses Sfiras of Bria. And the same is true of Yetzirah, and the same is true of Yetzirah, Asiyah, Aruchnis, and the same was true of the Gashmizdika Beis HaMikdash. And I believe we're going to see this lashon here, but in case we don't see it here, it's brought in other places in Chassidus that Hasfiris, this is a lashon, Hasfiris gamba asiyah in kedusha gemura. That's a direct quote. Sfiris even in asiyah are absolutely kedusha. The whole issue of klipa and kedusha, right? When we say Atzilus is lo yigor chara, there's only good in Atzilus, and Bria is rubik kulei tev, and Yetzirah is mechzal mechza, and Asiyah is rubik kulei ra. That's only in the Elam HaAtzilus, and the Elam HaBriya, the Elam HaYetzirah, the Elam HaSiyah. In the Beis HaMikdash, it's not shaykhs to discuss Yom Kedusha. The Eibishter lives there. And if Eibishter lives there, there's the bittul of Chochmah, like we've been discussing throughout the Tanya. And there's no klipa at all. The klipa can only be in the outside. By Atzilus, it says that the klipa of Atzilus, even the Olam HaAtzilus doesn't let it in, so it resides in Bria. Bria's got to deal with its own klipa and the klipa of Atzilus. Because in Atzilus, even the Olam HaAtzilus doesn't tolerate klipa. But every world is divided into these 2 schemes, into these 2 dimensions. The worlds and the Beis HaMikdash. You following so far? Now here's what you got to know. Neshamas HaMalachim live in Olamus. There's even Neshamas HaMalachim in Atzilus, like it says in the Geras HaKedesh Chav. There's for sure Neshamas HaMalachim in Bria and Yetzirah and Asiyah, but nobody lives in the Beis HaMikdash. Ein Yeshiva Ba'Zora Lamalchi B'Z David Bilvad. I don't know what that means. No, the only place you can enter Hashem's brain is in this Gashmizdika world when you're ready to bring Kabbalas. Lamaila, there's no way for a Neshama and a Malach to enter the Beis HaMikdash of Atzilus, which is the Esses Sfiras, this Mikdash of Bria and so forth. The Esses Sfiras of Atzilus, Ha'ira Chayechad, Ha'ira Gameichad, they're pure Getlachkeit. And in a different way, it's true of all the Beis HaMikdash, it's all the Esses Sfiras. So every word is a center. Until now, we've been talking about Neshamas having aliyas. And we said, If you serve Hashem with midas of your teva, your aliyas to Yetzirah. If you serve Hashem with the aliyas based on your seichel and you created new emotions, your aliyas to bria. Now we're going to divide it in half. The aliyah has two components. Aleph, the aliyah of the neshama. Beis, the aliyah of the Yiddishkeit, Torah and mitzvahs. We cannot go into the Beis HaMikdash. But the Torah and mitzvahs that we perform go into the Beis HaMikdash. They're deposited in the Beis HaMikdash. Whenever Yid does a mitzvah, so when Allah may have asked him, wherever is Lachachayim Nitzchim, so the neshama is going to go to the El Mayitzirah, if he said the Shem with the Kavana Tivis, to El Mabriya, if he said the Shem with Kavana Sichlis. But the Torah mitzvahs are going to go in the same world, not into the Olam, but into the Beis HaMikdash proper, because Torah mitzvahs are Getlachkeit. A neshama is Nivra, as we discussed many times before. It has Medidas Vagbolas. It's a Lakuth Shenasa Nivra, but it's Nivra. The Torah and mitzvahs goes into the Esses Firas Mamish. So now the plot of Kavanah is going to thicken. In other words, we've been talking about Kavanah. We're going to speak more about Kavanah. We said mitzvah b'lei Kavanah, go for neshama. You have to have Kavanah. If you do mitzvah like Kavanah, it's a mitzvah, but it's on a goof, on a neshama. What does the neshama affect? Kaidem kol. That you go up to Yetzirah and Bria. The neshama goes up to Yetzirah and Bria. Bending on the type of Kavanah, Chaya Medabir. But then there's something else. There's the aliyah not of the neshama but of the Yiddishkeit, which also goes up to the respective world based on your kavanah, but not to the world, to the Beis HaMikdash, the Esses Firas. This is what we're going to be learning now. Not till the end of the Perek, almost to the end of the Perek. At the end of the Perek, the Alter Rebbe is going to start addressing what happens if you have no kavanah, and we're going to go into the sugya of Shalei Lishma. And Shalei Lishma in context really means Chayser Kavanah, mitzvah b'lei kavanah. But the next couple of shiurim, before we get to the sugya of Shalei Lishma, in other words, if he didn't have kavanah, is addressing kavanas. But there's another point. So far, what did I tell you? That from now on, we're adding a new dimension to the discussion. The new dimension to the discussion is that the neshamas and go up to Bria Yitzira Oilamais, and the Torah mitzvahs goes up to the Beis HaMikdash, the Alakus. But there's another discussion. That is that there's really 3 madrigas in kavanah. And I'm going to tell you there's 4 madrigas. And Tanya only says 3. But in other places he brings a 4th. And there's 4 elamis. So the neshama can have 4 possible aliyahs. And the Torah mitzvahs can have 4 possible aliyahs to 4 different Batei Mikdash. And they are. If a Yid serves Hashem with Kabbalah Seil, but not a boring Kabbalah Seil, with Kabbalah Seil itself is a kavanah, called Tameh B'Maisav. His neshama goes up to Asiyah Ruchnis, and his Torah mitzvahs go up to the Beis HaMikdash of Asiyah Ruchnis. If a neshama serves the Eibishter with the Chilul Ruchim with Tivim, his neshama goes up to the Elam HaYetzirah, except Shabbos and Ish Chodesh. And his Torah mitzvahs go to the Beis HaMikdash of Elam HaYetzirah. If a Yid's neshama serves the Eibishter with the Chilul Ruchim with Sichliyim, with intellectual emotions, his neshama goes up to Elam HaBriyah, and his Torah mitzvahs goes to the Beis HaMikdash of Elam HaBriyah. If a Yid is a madrega of Merkava, like the Ovis, they go up to Atzilus. And their Torah mitzvahs goes up to the Esses Firas of Atzilus. And what's the pshat ziv teras of Avidasan? The pshat is pushed. The Beis HaMikdash has windows. The Yiddishkeit you lived in this life, especially the kavanah, creates light. And the light of your Yiddishkeit shines through the windows of the Beis HaMikdash and touches you. If you have levushim, if you have garments, that's why you have to have mitzvahs. Torah is not enough. You sit in Gan Eden, yeah? You learn Torah your whole life. You didn't do mitzvahs, you have a very big problem. Because the light of the Beis HaMikdash is shining through the windows of the Beis HaMikdash to you. What allows you to conduct, to carry, to experience the gili, the tainug really, of your Yiddishkeit is the levushim of mitzvahs that you have. You understand? And that's how it works. That's the whole scheme. What's the matter? You hear about going to Gan Eden, having Ziv Terasim V'Dasim, the ray of the Torah of is in the Beis HaMikdash, and it's shining through the Chalei Shkuf Matumim into the Olam HaBriyah, to the Olam HaYetzirah, or even Elam HaTzilis. And your ability to makabel it is because you have the levushim of Torah and mitzvahs. You understand? Ad kan hakdama. And we're now prepared to learn, not till the end of this Perek, but until he starts talking about Shalei Lishma, which is the very bottom of the Gimel Amud Aleph. Aval Avei Debeliyah say to us. So we're beginning on the Beis Amud Beis, that's page 104, Vehine. 5 lines from the top. We're now adding a new dimension to this drama of a kavanah or lack thereof. He says this. Everything we talked about till now, that kavanah causes the neshama to go up either to Yetzirah or to Bria. It has to do with the home of neshamas, or Mekayim Amidasan, where they stand, which is in Elam HaYetzirah and Elam HaBriyah. Now, why would it be good to be in Elam HaYetzirah? It's not the Lakus, because the light is shining from the Beis HaMikdash of Yetzirah. Dr. Rabbe, Achteros, and Vavedasan, the Yiddishkeit itself, they're taken Aveda, which is Mamish Alakus, as opposed to the Neshama, which is Alakus Shenas and Nivra. Like we discussed the Periklam and Hein and Periklam and Zayin. That even a Tzad Gomer, everybody Yev Avatar Nugim is still Yeshmi Sha'ayev. That's why you have to have Teina Mitzvah, Mitzvah Get Lichkeit. Mamish. Says the Rebbe, Nechlos Mamish B'Yitzviris. They go into the 10 Sfiris of the same world where the Neshama goes to. Sheheim Bechinas Alakus. Because the 10 Sfiris, not just in Atzilus, in Bria, in Yetzirah, in Asiyah Ruchnis, and even in the Beis HaMikdash HaGashmi. It's Alakus. Ve'er Ein Sof Misyached Behen. And the Ein Sof, the infinite light of Hashem, is one, not just with the Beis HaMikdash of Atzilus, it's mashma here that the Ein Sof is Nimshach in all the Batei Mikdash till Asiyah V'Tzarech here. B'tachas Ha'ir, the greatest oneness. V'hainu, this means that the Yud Sfir is the Bria. In the 10 Sfiris of Bria, and Yud Sfir is the Bria, is the Beis HaMikdash of Bria. That Adei, the Chilu, Rechim, Sichlim, through the Avodah of Ava and Yira and Ava, which was intellectual. So the Malach, the Neshama, goes to Eilam HaBria. The Teira and Mitzvahs goes with the Sfiris of Bria. And through your Avodah, of serving Hashem with your brain to create original emotions, Ein Sof is resting in the Sfiris, in the Beis HaMikdash of Eilam HaBria. Obi Yotzidas, the Yetzirah, the Dechilu, Rechim, Tivim, and the 10 Sfiras of Yetzirah through Yira and Ava, which is Tivim, which also is inviting in Ein Sof, which is Shoyre in the Beis HaMikdash of Eilam HaYetzirah. Obi Teicha B'Lubashes, and inside the Esses Sfiras, the Beis HaMikdash of Yetzirah, there's Yud Sfiras, the Atzilus, 10 Sfiras of Atzilus, which are, of course, Umiyuchades Behen, Betachlis, and the 10 Sfiras of Atzilus are one with the 10 Sfiras of Bria and 10 Sfiras of Yetzirah, and the Yud Sfiras of Atzilus, and the 10 Sfiras of Atzilus, Miyuchades Betachlis, B'Matzil, and Ein Sof Baruch Hu. It's connected to the Ein Sof. Bottom line is that in the Batei Mikdash, so the bottom line is in each Beis HaMikdash you have Alakus, right? And you should know there's 3 madregas. There's Neshama, there's Ruach, there's Nefesh. Neshama is also Getlachkeit. In the Beis HaMikdash of the Ilmas Biyad, there's a Gili of Neshama. Ruach and Nefesh are Nivre, are limited. Ein Neshama is Mugbal Bertzalakus. Through the Neshama, which is made in the Beis HaMikdash of Biyah, the Ein Sof. The Rebbe is saying now, Ein Sof, which is higher than Atzilus, is made in the Beis HaMikdash of the Sfiras of Atzilus, Bri, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and even the Gashmi, the Beis HaMikdash, like the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss in Tanya Perek Nun Gimel. That in the first Beis HaMikdash especially, the Gashmi, the Beis HaMikdash had Gili, not just of Alakus, but of Ein Sof Mamish. Mashenken and Neshamis, as opposed to the Neshamas themselves. And of course the Malachim as well. Einon Nechlaus Be'alakus, the Yud Sfiras, they cannot be included in the godliness of the 10 Sfiras. To be very, very Gashmias, there's no space, they don't fit. Elohim days, but they have to stand Be'echolos Umadurim, in the chambers and in the rooms, the Bria Yetzirah, which is basically the world. Just look at the ratio of Earth. Look at the Earth. Look at the Earth. What is the ratio? The Earth has a radius of 24,000 miles. Yeah? So you have to do 24,000 times 24,000 and take off a quarter. 3/4 of a globe. If it would be a square, it would be 24,000. Yeah. The Beis HaMikdash itself was what? It was 500 amas by 500 amas. It was the area of the Beis HaMikdash was a quarter of a mile, a square quarter of a mile. But it was very small. That's the brain. That's the Elokus of this massive world, and the whole world gets chayes, and everybody lives in the world. But you want to stay linked up to the Beis HaMikdash. V'nehenin miziv HaShechina. We have anah from the light of the Shechina, which is shining through the windows of the Beis HaMikdash to the world. Who ate Ein Sof Baruch Hu HaMiyuchad. B'Yud Sfiras the Bria Yetzirah the Ein Sof, which is one with the 10 Sfiras of Bria and 10 Sfiras of Yetzirah. V'Uziv Teirasav Avidasan Mamish. This is Mamish to take your own Yiddishkeit. Your Yiddishkeit you deposit in the Beis HaMikdash, and it shines through the window of the Beis HaMikdash to you. The reward for the mitzvah itself. And if I may add, we learn Teira. That's kavanah. And there's something called Tainug HaSaga, the pleasure of the HaSaga. The learning itself, this is Teira. The Tainug of the HaSaga, this is Ein Sof. And when you learn Teira in this lifetime, and you go up to Bria, to Yetzirah, wherever your world is, so you're mamshech on the Beis HaMikdash, not just the light of the Teira that you learned, but the pleasure that you learned. And this is, by the way, the difference between a neshama who's in Gan Eden before it came into this world, and a neshama in Gan Eden after it was already here. Neshamas in Gan Eden also understand Getlachkeit. But the pleasure from understanding Getlachkeit, which is Ein Sof, they only get after they were here once, and they go back up.